I am so freaking frustrated with this market. Hey, welcome back to the Living in Coastal Virginia channel. My name is Dan Inman, and I'm your local realtor and host. Today, we're going to talk about the real estate market in Virginia Beach and the surrounding cities, and how freaking frustrating it is as a buyer and a realtor representing those buyers in today's market. So let's just roll right into it, right? So I'm going to go into a couple of frustrations that we're going. This is a little bit of a rant, so I apologize. Stick with me to the end though, because I'm going to give you a few tips which I think will be helpful when you're going out there and making offers, and how to kind of maybe weather through this storm, and whether I think the market is actually going to crash or is it going to stay the same. Kind of covered there here at the end. First frustration is just buyers' expectations. Having worked in this market for several years, people's expectations of what was average, what's normal in the market. From August of 2019 to 2020, we saw almost an 8.5% appreciation. From 2020 to 2021 August, we saw nearly 13% appreciation. That means we're going from 258,000 to 280, 280 to 315,000. That's a big jump for a lot of people. So if you were a first-time home buyer who started saving for your down payment 2 or 3 years ago, you're just seeing a ridiculous jump in home prices. So not just that, what I've seen actually is that rents really aren't much different. There has been anywhere between a 15 to 20% increase in rents. So people that are out in the rental market, I'm hearing similar lamentations. They're out there going, man, Dan, I can't seem to find a rental, or my rents are going up. We're seeing across the board, rents used to go up 5% interest per year. And then with the evictions moratorium, we're seeing landlords that are trying to build in a little bit of risk and increasing rents all around to kind of insulate them from that risk of basically a tenant that's not paying rent. When I'm out there giving buyers advice, I used to say things like, hey, there's a 5-year rule, meaning to break even in real estate, you need to own the home between 4 and 5 years. By the time that you're paying off your mortgage and the amount that the house appreciates each year, when you actually go to sell it, you need about 4 to 5 years to break even, and then it starts making sense. Well, I've had buyers that bought 2 years ago and have made money. They think that they're brilliant now, that they're the most savvy investor on the planet, and going out and buying their next house. Now, take advantage of that. Enjoy the appreciation that's come. Nothing wrong with that. This can give you a false sense of security because there's no promise that tomorrow the housing market is going to continue to appreciate at the previous few years of appreciation that we've seen. Another one of the big frustrations I'm seeing, especially for first-time home buyers, is FHA and VA loans. Now, these are wonderful loan products built around servicing a certain community. However, if VA and FHA loans are going to have these standards at which sellers have to adhere to, and the conventional loan or a cash offer is not going to, which one are you going to sell to? Another one that I find that's really common is that conventional loans and obviously cash offers are seen to be far more secure, right? If you're going to be putting 10% down or 20% down on a conventional loan, or if you're paying all cash, that's not seen as risky. If you're putting the absolute minimum down and you're competing against someone that's doing that, you could be seen as a little bit more of a risk as a buyer. So, sellers are just slightly more inclined to take those other offers, the conventional and the cash, over. Another one of the things that I think is wild is there are some markets across the nation that are seeing as high as 30% all the way up to 50% cash offers. That's what you're competing against. And when I'm representing first-time home buyers and VA, which I absolutely love, it's so disheartening sometimes when they have to go out and compete against these and write 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 7 offers. And sometimes they quit. They're just like, I'm done. I can't take this. It's too stressful, right? I might as well just go rent. When you're competing against a cash offer, you don't have to worry about closing costs. They're much, much lower. You don't have to worry about appraisals. Conventional loans, there are no minimum property requirements or minimum property standards that the FHA and VA impose upon sellers. Those are things that have to get fixed before closing. And although the stigma of FHA and VA appraisals is not true, those appraisers do have to maintain a standard across no matter what type of loan type it is. There is a stigma across a lot of sellers that FHA and VA appraisals tend to come in low. Again, not true. Another one of the things that is just challenging, which I mentioned just a few seconds before, is closing costs, right? Closing costs are going to be anywhere between 2% and 5% of the loan, depending on the loan type, the credit, the DTI, all of those factors combined. You might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%. Now, a few years back when it was far less competitive, it wasn't the most difficult thing in the world to get a seller to help cover some of that, if not all of them. Or you could negotiate and say, hey, instead of $250,000 for your property, how about I pay $255,000 or $260,000 and you cover it? Well, when you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 offers that are all bidding it up, well, then you start running into appraisal problems. So the person that can cover their own closing costs just is in a far more competitive position. And guess what? Not all VA and first-time home buyers have that ability. So again, just another frustration with a lot of my first-time home buyers out there. It can be just so disheartening when you're doing a first-time home buyer consultation. You're talking about the process and the costs associated, and you can just see their face drop, right? They spent the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years saving up for that down payment. Let's say it's a 5% conventional loan, right? So 5% on $300,000 is $15,000. That's a lot of money to save. For them to come in and say, hey, by the way, if you're going to be competitive in this market, you need to have another 3 to 5%. We'll just say 3%, so another $9,000 to be able to cover your own closing costs to be competitive in this market. You can see their face drop. It's just so disheartening. And you have to remember that these closing costs, when you ask for them, they're coming out of the seller's pocket. They're not getting rolled into the loan. And the house has to appraise if that's what you offer for it to get it. Because if the house doesn't appraise, what do you think the seller is going to do? They're going to probably either 1, want to go back on market, or 2, they're going to be pushing back on those closing costs because they know that the likelihood that they can go back to another buyer that's willing to cover their closing costs is probably pretty high in the lowest inventory, the lowest interest rate, the highest buyer traffic market that we've had in a very long time. The last one that's just so frustrating and disheartening in this market as a realtor working with buyers out there is the appraisal guarantee. So I know we covered down payment, we covered doing the covering and closing costs, but again, I've had probably anywhere between 20 to 50% of the winning offers that we've won going out and writing offers required an appraisal guarantee to win. An appraisal guarantee is saying, hey, I know that you're listed for $250, we're going to offer you $275. I'm going to guarantee that you get that $275, right? If you have that cash available, awesome, right? You've budgeted for it, you know what you want, you have the ability to, great. But most first-time home buyers just don't have that ability. And again, it's just another one of those things where it's well, if you don't have the ability to provide that, you better be prepared to write multiple offers, or it might just be a market that you're not going to survive in. Hey, if you're finding this content helpful, hit that little like button. It lets the algorithm know that other people might find it helpful. And we release new content every single week. So if you hit subscribe, you'll get subscribed to that. My wife and I run a small mortgage and real estate team dedicated to helping people out. I know that I'm sitting here ranting and raving over these frustrations, but we've had a lot of success guiding people through this market and getting them under contract. So if we can help serve your real estate needs, or even if it's selling and getting the most amount for your property, we'd love to serve you and your family. All of our information is down below. So with all of this, do I see a slowdown? Unfortunately, not really. I've seen a little bit, but that's subjective. I only do, maybe we're on pace to do 60 deals this year, me individually. That's out of thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions in our market. So I want to be careful not to impose my subjective opinion. I've seen a little bit of slowdown, not much. Inventory has slightly gone up. Interest rates have slightly gone up. But the reality is that we are still in all-time historic lows for interest rates. We still are in historic lows for inventory. New construction starts are still way behind. The material supply lines, the labor supply lines have all gone up in price. You are seeing moratorium on evictions and forbearance continue. They've just recently rolled out a 40-year loan modification program to help keep people in their homes, which is great, right? We want to keep people in their homes, but that's going to reduce the amount of potential foreclosures that could come on the market, which would lower the potential market. There are talks of Biden rolling out a new first-time home buyer, tax credit, which again gives people access to money, which makes it more affordable to buy houses, which increases the amount of competition. So unfortunately, I just don't see any big slowdown. The main reason for the 2005, 2006, 2007 crash was because lending practices were garbage. People that shouldn't have been getting loans got loans, and they were giving loans that were completely ridiculous. So people were bidding out of control for properties. I have not had a single client complain to me over the last several years that getting a loan was just so easy. Sean, was it easy for you to get your loan?
No.
I had to do a letter of explanation from when I bought my house 2 years ago on why I sold my car. I wanted to be a smart ass and tell them none of your business, but I've just haven't seen anybody basically tell me how easy the loan process was. They have laxed up some standards, but the average credit score is higher. The average credit profile is better. The average DTI is better. All of these metrics, which we measure for people that are qualifying for loans, has improved, not decreased. So 3 tips here at the very end. How do we go through this market without losing our freaking minds here? One would just be loans. If you have the ability to switch from an FHA, maybe even a VA, to conventional, you might want to look into it. I realize that that's difficult to do. There are 3% down conventional loan products that are out there, and you can look at doing it that way so that you can be more competitive. One of the other things you can do is you can lower the amount of closing costs that are required by increasing your interest rate. You might want to talk to your loan officer about that. Again, my wife can help you out with that. Another benefit of the conventional loan is that PMI drops off automatically at 78%. And maybe you can use that money saved on the closing costs for the appraisal guarantee. Tip number 2 would just be start the process early. The more restrictions or limitations you have on the amount of money that you come out of pocket, the earlier the process you need to start, or the more flexibility in time that you need to have. 60, 90, 120 days early is going to be helpful. Now, it's also important to remember that the day that you close, let's say you close in mid-February, your first payment's not going to be till April, so you have a little bit of flexibility on that first payment. So if you have constraints, like we've talked about so far, you need to give yourself enough time if you have to write 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 offers before you win. You cannot know perfectly what your competition is doing. You don't know when you're competing with crazy, and so it just might be a reality that you have to make multiple offers to win. Lastly, I'll say here is look for money in unconventional places. There are multiple ways to get a down payment, pay for closing costs, or an appraisal guarantee. You have retirement accounts. And I would definitely say don't dip into your savings, that thing that's going to allow you, if the car transmission breaks, to repair that. But you may be able to get a gift from family. You're allowed to get $15,000 tax-free from a family member. If you're going to get that from a non-family member, it needs to be seasoned in an account for over 2 months, preferably 3, so that you don't have to do, you can actually use those funds. Lastly, and your parents themselves may have stayed in their house for multiple years. Last year alone, I think in the state of Virginia, we had something like the average equity earned in 2020 was $28,000. And so maybe there's a cash out refi or HELOC or some capital equity there that your parents could help you out with. Thanks so much for listening to me rant about this market and how frustrating it can be. Go ahead and hit the like button if you found this content helpful. Until next time, stay classy, Coastal Virginia.